Thanks, listeners. It is time to visit with our local law enforcement. Our Chief of Police, that is Elko City Police Chief Tyler Trouten, is in studio, and he is sitting alongside Elko County Sheriff Aitor Narvaiza. Thank you, gentlemen, for making time out to talk to our listeners today.
Thank you, Lori. Always happy to be here.
We appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you to, of course, Aitor Narvaiza. There you go, Sheriff. I got you tuned in now.
Thanks.
All right.
Appreciate that.
Absolutely. So as always, busy agenda with a lot of things to get to. Just wanted to give a shout out to the police department and to the SWAT team, and to let them know how much they are appreciated, Chief, and how much the police officers are for the work that you're doing every day and in helping our citizens and keeping the community safe. And just wanted to shout out to you guys.
Well, I appreciate it, and always try to point out too, the SWAT team, along with several of our teams, is not just police department. Sheriff's Office has several deputies on it, members from Carlin PD, West Wendover PD. But again, we've talked about it, I don't know how many times.
It's a great collaborative effort.
We're all together on this.
Absolutely. So, but thanks. And you're dealing with a lot of mental health issues, not only, within the department, which it's great to talk about it because it's a safe space, and all employees of every city and county department are encouraged to, to deal with their stress. I know with an election season, various county departments are also dealing with a lot of stress. It's a stressful time in the country, Chief.
It's stressful on multiple fronts, between inflation and lingering effects of COVID and the effects from that, I guess, that still carry on to this day. But it is, one of the interesting things. We've talked before too. Mental health touches so many of the aspects that we deal with as law enforcement. But NAMI is having their NAMI Walk here in October coming up, and one of the things I love about it is, a lot of it is about awareness. There's still this stigma, if you call something crazy, it has that negative connotation to it. But the simple fact is, people get stressed, and a large number of Americans will have some mental illness sometime in their life. Maybe not throughout their life, maybe for just a period of time. Some, it's a lifelong, condition that they have to deal with. But we've got to learn to accept it, talk about it, and work to help people get through it. It's just not something you can ignore. And, some of the more recent calls we've had where it does get extreme, a lot of them it's because it just has not been addressed. There has not been that ability for people to adapt, overcome, and it just gets predominantly worse and oftentimes ends quite badly.
All right. So we just want to encourage people, if someone you care for, is in mental crisis, there is a number to call. It's 988, and that is the National Suicide Hotline and a crisis line, and it will direct you to local resources. So important to note.
So it's getting better at directing to local resources. We also have, probably couldn't have said this 10 years ago, but we have a lot of resources coming into Elko now, and I know you have some advertising from some of those providers and stuff in the area, but there are a lot of resources available, and it's not just if you're, suicidal or things like that. A lot of times it's just people struggling. There's outpatient resources. There's all kinds of things available. Just don't hesitate. Again, better to reach out and start working on a problem than ignore it until it's too big.
That's right. So don't go it alone. And then looking to form a team, I know you appealed to city council leaders, hoping that a few folks might get together for your NAMI Walk on October 19th, right?
Correct. So this is open. It's like a lot of these fundraisers where you can have teams if you are a business owner and want to get your folks out there. Individuals can participate. It's really just a walk. It's not really a competition, but it's about getting people together, recognizing that it is an issue. It shouldn't be something that's, can't be spoken of. To the contrary, it should be talked about, and no different than if you talk about having diabetes or high blood pressure or, whatever your health malady may be. But to, see some of the folks who are dealing with it and overcoming it and, doing well. So really unique thing. It'll be in the Elko City Park. Starts at 9 a.m., I believe, for the registration. You can go online. They are always looking for sponsors. That funding does go to help and bring in additional resources. So great effort by NAMI, and hope to see a lot of folks out there.
National Alliance for Mental Illness. You can find NAMI easily online. You just Google that. Here in Elko, NAMI has an office. I believe they're still housed within PACE headquarters, Partners Allied for Community Excellence. Yeah, so a lot of great work, and they're also collaborating with area schools. So getting out the word on October 19th for the NAMI Walk. So switching over to Sheriff Aitor Narvaiza for just a bit. Sheriff, I think what's dominating the talk in your office, at least, is a lot of conflict right now on public and private lands with hunters.
Yeah, that's, hunting season's been among us here the last couple of weeks, and we're dealing with hunters trespassing on people's properties, shooting animals. They're breaking down gates, they're tearing down stuff, cutting locks, and, people, I know for a fact, talking to Lieutenant Jackson, they've been citing trespassers, and so, the whole 2447 road issue is upon us, and, there has to be, those roads have to be adjudicated through the county, and there's, it's right now, it's just a mess trying to prove that those are all county roads, and we've met with Tyler and Fish and Game and some of the ranchers, so we're working on that, so, just give us some time and just be courteous, don't be cutting locks, don't be doing damage, and please be respectful to the property.
So what the sheriff is referring to is the RS 2477. Those are historic easements across public lands that are claimed, by whether it's Native American tribes or ranching, anyone who may have historically used those roads long before the federal agencies were established. But as you said, you cannot just claim an RS 2477. It has to be designated in order to have control of that road. That means
Correct.
putting up your own gate, putting up any kind of sign, trying to, discourage someone from using that road, that established road. That also has to be proven. You can find out more information at the county assessor's office.
Correct.
There's also an important app, and I think, Chief, you referred to the app known as Onyx. Is that right? And something you've used before when you're out hunting?
Yeah, absolutely. It does cost money, but it's not very expensive. It's great for not just showing you what is public and what is private, but also who is in control of that private land. So you can go out, you can meet the ranchers, seek permission to hunt there or traverse their property, whatever it may be. But very useful, very accurate. Strongly encourage people to have that. And, as a hunter, nothing irritates me more than people who go out and are dumb and tear out locks or gates or destroy property. All you're doing is hurting the rest of us. So I just wish people would knock their stupid crap off before it gets really ugly and, somebody decides to just lock everybody out of everything.
Right. We have these beautiful, vast public lands, but we need access to them. Again, it's been an issue at times. It bubbles over. And Sheriff, you mentioned some of this is being exacerbated by out-of-town owners. They're buying up huge tracts of public or of private lands, I should say, that may also have some egress or ingress to public lands behind them or around them, through a valley that's been known for ranching. This is causing some conflict. There's some big name owners.
You look at some of these ranches, they've been bought up by people with lots and lots and lots of money. And you look at like Chief John said on Onyx, you can tell they're checkerboarded on the map. They might have a couple acres here, and then there might be one particular place we were arguing with last week. Was only like a half a mile of road that actually belongs to the BLM, but you got to drive through the ranch. So it's been locked up, and we're trying to get them to open it. Now it's all in litigation, so it's a mess, and it's all big money and a lot of money involved in, they get those incentive tags and stuff, and I get it, but people have to realize, you can't be denied access to BLM property, and that's our fight right now.
All right, Sheriff. And then one more issue too, buyer beware. I mean, if you are offered a depredation or an incentive tag, make sure you know what's associated with that, what lawfully, you should be paying for, what the responsibilities are that come with those tags. Right. They're issued by Department of Wildlife. It's not the private citizen does not own the wildlife. The wildlife is managed by NDOW.
Correct. That's correct. So with this Onyx map, it tells you if you're on private, if you're on BLM or county, it tells you all that. It even tells you who the rancher is, who owns that property. So one of the disputes last 2 weeks ago we had was the trespassing issue, and the guy was able to show us, no, I'm on Onyx, I'm a couple, I have the right to go through there. And so it's an ongoing battle, and it's going to end up probably in a court.
All right. We just don't want to see tempers flare, certainly when you're in a situation like that in the field. As always, Nevada Department of Wildlife says, report anything that is suspicious. Don't try to intervene. Use the Operation Game Thief 1-800-992-3030. There's also an NDOW app that you can download if you do have concerns. If you see someone vandalizing property, locks being cut, trespassing going on, certainly any kind of game being harvested out of season or in multiples, there are a number of violations. So it's hunting season. And unfortunately, as the chief mentioned, it takes only one person to ruin it for the rest of us. So,
Right.
Yeah. So thank you, Sheriff Aitor Narvaiza and our City Police Chief Ty Trouten. I guess we might as well get it out of the way because we are in election season, Chief. And have we had any concerns or reports? Are we being safe and civil? Have we had signs taken down or stolen? Any kind of reports like that?
Well, we have had some signs demolished and taken down. We seem to get that every season because people think their opinion is more important than rights, but nothing over the top or abnormal for most years. Thankfully, most people around here are pretty level-headed. I think a lot of times it comes down to younger crowds that just frankly don't have the respect they should have even to be in society, much less part of our processes for political effects. I also have not heard of anything and hope we may be lucky not to have any political visits.
Oh boy.
Yeah.
I am knocking on wood. Right. They certainly don't need to visit Elko County. We're not one of the spots we're not really a swing county.
Yeah, I don't think we have that status any longer, but while it's always nice and, I wholly endorse people getting out and listening to the candidates and learning about them. It is so much work and consumes so many resources from all law enforcement agencies and other emergency services when they come to visit. And as we've seen across the country this year, there's a lot of people who just can't seem to abide by the processes with these attempted assassination attempts and other such things. We don't need that headache here either.
Right. Yeah, Chief. I can tell by the look on the Chief's face. I mean, there's just the stress mounts. So, and there's a lot of work that goes on behind the scenes. The candidates themselves, will direct their resources and decide where to visit. So, as far as media goes, we haven't heard of any. Have you heard of any visits?
No,
Sheriff?
I haven't heard of anything. I know with that new court ruling on some of the inmates being able to vote. Mm-hmm. At this election right now, I do have 2 that are incarcerated.
Okay.
They've both been from out of town. We've contacted the town, and they've actually sent us their mail-in ballot. So we'll give it to them, have them fill it out, and then we'll send it back to the place. So we're just trying to stay out of trouble from the ACLU.
Early voting starts, that's right. And inmates who are not convicted of crimes, who are simply awaiting their verdicts, are entitled to vote. So,
Correct.
yes.
That's correct. That's a new ruling came down last year, and a Supreme Court ruling. So we have to help them out and do whatever it's in our power to make sure they get the votes casted.
All right. So, following up on that, we also want to touch on another topic, which I personally, I guess I wasn't really surprised with use of mug shots, because there are some departments, and we discussed this on this program not long ago. There's a rural sheriff, not in Elko County. Certainly, Sheriff Aitor knows who we're talking about, but would use mug shots from people who were, arrested, taken into custody, and then sort of humiliate those people online on the Facebook pages managed by that sheriff's department. I don't know whether it had anything to do with, I think you're going to tell us about Houston versus Maricopa County and why we are no longer seeing mugshots of people in jail, Sheriff, or at least temporarily.
Yeah, it's this Supreme Court ruling just came down a couple of weeks ago. It's Houston versus Maricopa County. Well, what it was is basically an individual gets arrested for a crime. They took his book and photo and put it out for a press release or in the paper. And then he went to court and he was found not guilty. Therefore, his argument was, hey, you guys put my picture all over town and everybody knows me, and I was found not guilty, so it went to the Supreme Court. And they're saying you can't use booking photos unless there's an emergency to the public or there's some sort of outcry to the public, like, if the guys like we're chasing right now in Montello Chase, we got his photo out, but he's got several felony warrants. He's got a lot of gun charges. So therefore, there's where we can do it. and we put it out to the public, make sure that the public is safe. And whether they're sex offenders, if we do have a sex offender on the street that's causing harm to kids, we do have those rights. But we can't, if it's something minor, we probably won't do it.
Oh, no, I don't think that with minors, certainly. I can't even think that the media, I know that.
No, I was talking minor crimes.
Oh, minor crimes. Good. Yeah.
Juveniles,
Okay.
we won't do it.
Oh, no,
period.
never. No, they don't. And again, that's because it could be, construed as cruel and unusual. That's under the Eighth Amendment. And I know, Chief, you know your constitutional law and understand, some of the concerns. I mean, these booking mugshot photos can live forever now online on the internet. And if you're arrested for a misdemeanor.
Well, and in this case, it was unique because what's unique about it is he didn't even have a day in court. He was arrested but never charged by the district attorney's office. So in this one, it hasn't gone to Supreme Court yet. We're not sure if we'll see it appealed up there. It went to Ninth Circuit,
Right.
and they often are overturned. You can see in other countries, I know we had it when an individual that's been sentenced and serving a long time in prison, hopefully for murder here, was arrested in Mexico. They do a sensationalized perp walk. They had cops out there with full helmets and goggles on like they were some SWAT raid team, walking him across this stage, almost like you were going to the Emmys or something like that, and really sensationalize it. This country's not done things like that. Perhaps maybe back in the heyday of the 20s and stuff with some of our notorious gangsters, but generally you do see the mugshots on arrest. The court ruling basically says they have not been convicted in general, so you are doing harm to them by publishing to everybody that, hey, they've been arrested for this. The argument was by Maricopa County that it was for transparency reasons. The courts found that lacking, at least that panel of the Ninth Circuit. So we'll see where it goes from here. But yeah, for right now, there won't be mugshots coming out unless it's somebody who is wanted, if there is a risk to the public from an individual, or if we're seeking to get them identified, meaning we have video or photos of somebody, but we don't know who they are. And as the sheriff pointed out, for our sex offenders. So you'll still see them in some of those instances, but otherwise you won't.
Right. It's common sense. That makes sense. Sex offenders, felons, people who are wanted at large in connection with crimes. You've got some video evidence. You need to circulate a photograph. I can say that in the couple of weeks that there have been no mugshots. It's interesting because as media, we do scrutinize the arrest reports. And now without having photos, it's so much easier I know this sounds, but you hone right in on, okay, is this a felony? That's the first thing you look for. Like today, you had a suspect in there from West Wendover, Sheriff, and had a pile of felonies on there and all kinds of charges. Right?
They're, that's... Wendover stays pretty busy too. They're a smaller apartment, but they have everything from the Utah side, and so they're busy. And he is in trouble. He's got a lot of charges in there.
He used to be a former newspaper editor here in Elko, who now sits on the Elko County Commission. Said names make the news. So it was always about personality, right? Well, we don't do that so much in Elko County. Is it a felony? Because we have so many more arrests, so much more serious. I don't want to put it that way, like so much more serious crime, but we do have more serious crime on a regular basis than we used to. So it's not so much who got a DUI or how many DUIs did we get.
Well, and what would be interesting out of this too is because one of the critical points in this case was that the person had not even been charged, much less convicted. But does that mean now that when people are convicted, will we see, here's the mugshots of people who've been convicted this week? Arguably, there is some value, I think, to the public. Oftentimes it's somewhat difficult to get into a person's true criminal history as an employer to know who it is you're hiring. There are some online resources that can do some things, but there's a lot of times people are very shocked and surprised to see who was, not just arrested, but also convicted of crimes. These folks don't advertise it, and often have quite a different face they try to put on in public, but we know a lot of the things they are up to.
Yeah, booking photo can certainly have some indication, and it doesn't. Well, yeah, let's just see. That is interesting, though. Maybe we would pay more attention to who was being convicted if we saw a system like that was actually at a different tiers or different levels.
Well, it is because, so now contrast this with some of the stuff that's going on nationally of, they've issued an arrest warrant for so-and-so and they're, well, how is that any different than the person who just got picked up and was arrested? At least this person's arrested. We can't put their mugshot out now. It could have quite a significant effect on media down the road. We're even talking about what happens in court. I don't know if a sketch would qualify, but when there's often media reports, footage and or sketches showing the defendant, they're not yet convicted.
Right, and we're at the judge's discretion, frankly.
Right.
You know that as media, we have to go with what the judge wants.
And
Yeah.
of course, this is strictly so far Ninth Circuit, so it's Nevada,
Exactly.
California. It's limited. It's not across the country yet, but I do suspect it may get modified somewhat to where once they're charged, you can disseminate because that would be the check on law enforcement. The prosecutors now reviewed it and said, yes, we're going to charge. Perhaps that would be appropriate. A little bit less than conviction, but more than just the arrest. Time will tell.
Yep. Interesting, though. Interesting place. So we'll see where that Ninth Circuit ruling goes. Other things that we have on the list, I want to make sure, Sheriff, you can update us on. There was a situation in Spring Creek in which your deputies were able to recover an apparent victim of human trafficking.
That's correct. Just a couple of weeks ago, we did receive a call from Ogden and Provo Police Department, possibly a kidnapping case that started in Mexico. This individual was brought to Utah supposedly to work in gathering pine nuts, 15 years of age. Somehow she ended up in Elko. We received a notice from the police department and FBI. We obtained a warrant, went to the house, took the juvenile, and we hooked her up with family services and the family, the FBI, and not the FBI, but the detectives from the agency arrived, interviewed the male and the female and the juvenile, and the juvenile was taken back into Utah, and that case is still pending. So I'm assuming there should be warrants for arrest coming out here pretty time soon, but the juvenile is good and is back with their family.
It's interesting because we hear about nanny situations, so you don't think anything of it, or a lot of people will associate human trafficking with sex crimes. But in this case, this was a 15-year-old child who belonged in Mexico with family, ended up in Nevada, in Spring Creek, and was caring for someone else's children.
That's correct. And
that was against the law.
Right. And, we got the call, and they moved in real quick. They got the warrants done that same day, right, a couple hours afterwards, and they got it done really fast, took the juvenile in custody with family services, and so they interviewed everybody, and we'll see when that comes out.
Do you think that's more common than people realize, Chief, or do you have any experience with that? Or
So if people, you can do an online search just from your home computer and stuff, and you will find that human trafficking is probably much more prevalent than most people would like to admit. It is not just sex trafficking. I think that you're correct. That often is what comes to mind. It's the people being prostituted on the streets, perhaps like Vegas or things like that. They talk about it as quite common in other businesses, landscaping, restaurants, different things like that. People are promised one thing, lured over here. Oftentimes, then there's fraud or coercion, some way to twist their arm essentially to keep them quiet and cooperative, and that might be family back home that are under threat of harm if they don't cooperate. I know many years ago we had that marijuana grow that was up there towards O'Neill Basin area, and the one guy was quite clear. He'd basically been forced that you're going to go up here, you're going to work for a year, we will pay you. But don't get caught, don't go to the cops, or your family down here in Mexico will pay. And so I always get rather angry when I hear people talk about, drugs don't hurt, it's a victimless crime, things like that. Most people are just too ignorant to understand there's a lot of victims involved in stuff, even right down to just simple marijuana. And I would argue, too, that even with dispensaries, a lot of the marijuana people are buying is still not, legal, grown, it's black market marijuana. That has plagued many of these states that have the dispensaries. So that goes on a lot. And I think people either just choose to turn a blind eye to it, or I guess maybe you're too lazy to look into it.
Chief Ty Trouten is our guest today alongside Sheriff Aitor Narvaiza, talking just about a variety of local issues. And we know, Sheriff, you had a shooting at Wells also recently, a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, we had
victims recovering?
Yeah, we had a shooting. We do have one in custody. The male was shot. He's about ready to get released from the hospital. My understanding as of today, he's probably going to have to go through some therapy. But he's recuperating, and
was that
he's
a
fine.
domestic violence, or do we know if there was a crime?
We don't know if it was domestic violence. I know the individual who did the shooting a couple of weeks ago, prior to this shooting, supposedly she was involved in another shooting, but nobody wanted to participate in that call. But when the deputies did stop her, she was found in possession of a firearm, which she is an ex-felon, so she was arrested on that charge. So now she got picked up again on another ex-felon charge and shooting this individual. So, but this time we don't know what was the actual cause of the shooting, because he's still in Utah.
Okay, so there will be an investigation. When you said, too, I wanted to make sure you meant that no one wanted to press charges in the initial?
Nobody wanted to cooperate.
Okay.
Let me just put it that way. Nobody knew anything about it. The individuals we have no idea what you're talking about, but we were still able to make the arrest on the ex-felon possession of firearm.
Okay, and sometimes that's what gets the attention, when nobody wants to cooperate,
Right.
and there's obvious signs of some sort of criminal activity. So, a little difficult to outsmart the sheriff in this case, right, or any of your deputies.
Chief and I have been doing this a long time. When you get caught in those kind of situations and they're not cooperating, it just gives you that much more incentive to go out and find the reason why it took place. So our guys did a pretty good job. She was located and arrested.
All right. Well, Sheriff, is there anything else on your list before I give the chief a chance to maybe give us an update on our latest local, on the verge of nuisance property anyway? So.
No, the only thing I'd like to say is we go back to the booking photos. We will still put the booking photos on sex offenders that have been convicted in our county. You can go to the state page or the Elko County Sheriff's Office webpage, and on there will be the photos, and those will still, we're covered under Megan's law under that. So that's just the 3 different levels where you have to register: Tier 1, 3 months; Tier 2, 6 months; Tier 3, 1 year. So those are mandated by the state, and our job to go out and find them, but those booking photos of sex offenders will still be online.
Those are important. Those are identifying photos so that anybody who could be in harm's way, could be victimized by someone who's been convicted, and that's all decided by, federal law. So certainly, and I think it's also important to point out, Sheriff, you and I have had these discussions on the air, that your department, under your administration, and I believe probably the most recent sheriffs, have always handled those mugshots responsibly. You don't allow these humiliating photos to be published.
As you know, we had a photo probably 5-6 years ago, and it was published. I was not very happy about it. You and I had this conversation, and I immediately pulled it down and made it, hey, no more, that's not right. So it is wrong when they're sitting there and giving you the bird, or it's probably something you shouldn't be putting out, but so we changed the policy a while back, and so we don't do it anymore. We haven't done it for years and years.
Right, and it is sometimes people's mugshots, you're not able to take a booking photo because they're under the influence, they're unconscious, they're incapacitated.
They're
that's
just mad at the world.
Yeah, so you can't get a
that
photo.
happens quite a bit.
Yes,
right?
Right.
So,
and that could again be prejudicial, or yeah.
So you just give them a couple of days to calm down, and then they'll work through it pretty good.
You get a better photo.
We try to get just regular booking photos, and because like you said, those booking photos stay with you forever, when you're convicted or whatever. So
it's kind of like living with a bad driver's license photo, So I wanted to thank you, Sheriff. Aitor Narvaiza, our sheriff, and I wanted to check in with you, Chief, to see any late news on Shady Elms, an update. Last week's or Tuesday's council meeting was just over like that. That Mandy Simons knows how to run a meeting.
She certainly doesn't waste any time, that's for sure. So it's my understanding they've got most of the plumbing issues rectified now. They're still working through some of the electrical issues, which are concerning to me. I mean, this is electrical, something even as a do-it-yourselfer I do not mess with it. Great potential there for harm, but I will defer, I guess, to Ralph from the city. He's saying he's seeing progress, they're making good strides. However, I'd sympathize with some of the neighbors and stuff. When I look up there, what I see does not look like a whole lot of progress. To me, it's we're way behind the curve in the first place and never should have gotten to this point. And boy, the progress just seems very slow at this point. I know they've hauled several of the more like camper style trailers out of there, but there's still a couple in there. There's just general debris and trash. I mean, it seems like they could be doing a lot more from my perspective quickly. Again, I'll defer to the city on this and so forth. I'm happy they are doing some things. That is most definitely a welcome change. But it just can't be fast enough for me.
Well, when Claire Morris, a former city police chief, said this was an issue he was dealing with decades ago, that's very discouraging to know this has been going on this long. So does the city police department handle evictions?
No, so we generally aren't involved in the service of papers for the evictions. That goes to the sheriff's office. Where we do get involved a lot of times is you've been evicted, now it's time to go. Different things like that. We've had several issues over the years, some at that location where people would be lawfully evicted and keep trying to return, try to store their pets back there, and different things like that. It is, sad. We all know that over time, any structure, anything like that, tends to get worn down and can be dilapidated unless there's regular upkeep. But former Chief Morris is absolutely correct, Councilman Morris. There's been issues over the year, different owners. Some of the issues will get rectified to be a little bit better for a while, and then, of course, it slacks off again. But it is a horrible eyesore in most regards. It's sad to me. I know there's some families that live there, and the fact that they have to have their children living in such an environment, man, it's just wholly irresponsible to me for the landlord that owns that property. Put some pride into it.
So that also begs the question, and you would know this too because you enforce code. Does the city not have codes?
So there are codes and stuff, but it gets very difficult when you get into residential codes. Most of the codes are aimed at businesses where you have the public at risk. So a lot of these things, while there are different codes, again, some of them, it's just the sheer number of the violations would inundate the city for probably 30, 40 years to hear them all out. This is why it's key that the property owners, the management, have to be on point in taking care of this. And I would kind of liken it to the dealings I have with people who have liquor licenses. If you step outside of the boundaries, we're going to meet. You get a conversation. You screw it up again, you go before council and yank their license. It would behoove them to do it the right way and make it a nice, appealing place. You can charge more for rent. You can have more renters. There's a lot of empty spaces at that park. I just don't understand why people treat it this way rather than make it a good business.
Yeah, you would hope that someone has an investment and that they would not need to be told what to do to care for that investment, and especially when you mention. But I guess it is important to note that when children are involved, then we do have an agency. DCFS can come in and remove children from environments like that.
Well, and I'm not talking, there are specific residences in that park that they're not bad. They're certainly not a mansion by any stretch of the means. But the
they're
problem
maintaining.
But yeah, they're doing everything right. So nothing against them or their parents. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, though, the next lot over,
I see,
or the next trailer that's burned out and it's just a pile of rubbish and debris. It's just beyond me how that's, okay to somebody or in their mind that that's all right to have. And I think a lot of these folks that do live there and try to do the right things, they're probably hesitant to try to be too loud in their criticisms of the manager for fear that, they'll just kick us out and then where do we go?
Right, because it's not, they're living there because they really don't have a lot of choices. Yeah, that's their that's Elko's brand of affordable housing, sadly.
Yeah, well, and there's never enough of that, but low socioeconomic status shouldn't, I guess, compel you to live in unsafe environments.
Right. Sheriff, anything else either on that?
No,
or?
we're good. I appreciate you having us. It's busy, working, and
I think we got to all your list today, right?
yeah.
Good.
I don't bring in a list very often, but it's
You brought a list
it's
today.
usually the chief has the list. I'm just
You were organized, so
Yeah.
yes, thank you. No, you're always organized. I didn't mean it that way. Just like you had a list, so we got to it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Sheriff.
thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And Police Chief Ty Trouten, thank you so much. And hopefully we can get a nice group together for your NAMI Walk on October 19th. It would be really. We'd love to support the department. Again, I opened the program saying that, and I think you know why. And I just think it's nice to hear that you're appreciated, both the Sheriff's Department and the Elko Police Department. So.
Well, thank you, Lori. And
thank you.
Yeah.
just everybody stay safe out there.
All right. Thanks, listeners. Thanks for joining us for another edition of Elko Live today here on KELK. Tomorrow, we'll get an update from Julie Gabrielson, Nevada Department of Wildlife.